From Theo's Pets, and you just saw clips of Mitsuki, who is a 6-foot BCI, which is a Boa Constrictor Imperator, I do believe, that we just rescued. So let me grab him and let's talk about him, shall we? Alright, well, here he is. This is Mitsuki. We got Mitsuki. We picked him up the day before Christmas Eve. So I've had him a couple of weeks now. I did finally get him to shed and eat. When I got him, he was stuck in shed. He had one eye that was in blue. The guy that I got him from said that he had not eaten in 2 weeks because he was starting to shed. Though the one eye stayed in blue and nothing else blued. So I had him honestly about another week and a half before I got his shed to progress anymore. He came to me in this 4x2x2 cabinet case you can see back there, which will not hold humidity at all. So he was very dried out. He was on 2 handfuls of mulch with no hides or foliage or anything in the enclosure. The only enrichment he really had was they took a curtain rod like you get from the dollar store, those like cheapo, like $4.50, $5 ones, and drilled it into the back of the enclosure, and then zip tied the front into like a triangle so that I guess you could perch on it. Like this 6-foot snake was going to perch on this sharp, jagged curtain rod, but apparently that's what they anticipated. Anyway, so got him in blue. He hadn't eaten. He's now shed completely in one giant 6-foot 3-inch shed, which I have hanging on the door back here drying. He also has, as you can see from the video in the beginning, there's scabbing on the top of his nose and above his eye sockets, and then also down his neck and back. When we got him, that cage was infested with spiders and beetles, which are, I'm assuming, were eating holes in him. But the ones on the top of his nose and his eye sockets maybe were from climbing at the top of the screen roof that was on it to get to probably the light, because he was also kept in a shed outside. So I would imagine he was crawling towards that light, and that could be where all of the scabbing on the top of his eye sockets and nose come from. I've been medicating it with Q-tips now and got them almost completely healed up, as well as the ones on the back of his head and neck. I mean, realistically, he's just a really good boy. Now, getting into taking care of a boa constrictor. It was a little more than I honestly had anticipated at first. Now, my experience with snakes up until this point was I had a corn snake who you'll see in another video, I'm sure, and I'd had him maybe a week and a half. I had actually bought the corn snake for myself for Christmas because I've wanted a snake for a long time. Me and the wife rescued 2 beardies. I used to remove snakes from like houses and properties and whatnot and relocate them. So I'm not unfamiliar with snakes. I'm just unfamiliar with keeping snakes. So I got a corn snake after tons and tons of research between picking that and ball pythons. Because there's some really pretty ball pythons. There's also some really pretty corn snakes. I really want a palmetto corn snake if anybody wants to help me out with that. I looked at ball pythons. I looked at boas. They need a little higher humidity. Temps are about on par with most of what else I have at the moment. But anyway, so I had this corn snake and I was at the local pet store getting pet supplies. And so, not to incriminate anyone, but I'm gonna leave some aspects of this a little vague. Basically, I end up talking to a guy on the phone, well, through text message and email, about the snake. Now, the pictures I get of him are once again in that 4x2x2 glass cabinet cage enclosure. It's got like 3 handfuls of mulch in it, and it's outside on like a gravel floor in a shed. Okay, so I talk to him. I tell him I'll take the snake. I didn't know how bad the snake was just from the pictures and whatnot and talking to him. And B, I still didn't know 100% what taking care of a boa entails. So I talked to him. He wants $200 for the cage, not the snake, just the cage. So talked to the wife. Whatever, Christmas is coming up, literally within days at this point. She still had some shopping to do or something. So basically, we decided that if the snake is still available after Christmas, we come back and revisit this in like a week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever. Okay. So I talked to dude, and that's what we decided on. Well, that night it drops down. Well, it's supposed to drop down to like 37 degrees, and it actually ends up dropping down to like 29, somewhere in there. And I just don't sleep thinking about the snake outside in this shed with just a heat lamp on top of it. Hopefully they moved him inside. I don't know, because maybe he would be dead if they didn't. Maybe the garage has a little bit of heat. I don't know. All I know is I was stressed out the whole night thinking about this snake in this shock. So the next morning I go wake my wife up, and basically my mother, God bless her, for Christmas every year gives me like $100. So I asked my wife if the shopping she had left to do was for me, and it was. And so I convinced her to, between the money I'm going to get from my mother and what she's going to spend on my Christmas gift, to instead, let's go get this snake. So we pile up in the car, and me and her and the baby drove an hour 45 up the road to the middle of nowhere to go meet this guy in a gas station parking lot. So we get there, I give him the money. Then he helps me get that enclosure into the back of the car. Kinda, because it takes me another like 15-20 minutes to actually get it in there where I can shut the thing. He just helped me like move it from his truck bed in there. He hands me the snake in a 10-gallon tank. So I think it had something else in it, because there was a carpet and a water dish in there, and he just threw the snake on top of it, threw a towel on top of that. Hands me the snake, gets in the truck, leaves. Okay. Then I start looking at the snake. The snake's mouth is stuck like open. I start seeing all these like open and bleeding holes and stuff in the top of its head and nose, above its eyes and neck, which I showed you earlier. It just didn't look quite right to me. So whatever, he doesn't message me, nothing. He doesn't tell me the snake's name. He doesn't tell me if it's eaten frozen thawed or alive. Nothing, none of this. So I get the snake, I get it home. I'm gonna go now. once again, I said the only experience I had at this point really with snakes was a corn snake, which, because we live by the coast, I keep on aspen to keep the humidity like 40. So I was going to fill the bottom of his tank with aspen. So I went to the store to go get some aspen while I had my wife clean out this cage because he had pooped in here like 4 or 5 times on this mulch. No man, she's a little grumpy about this whole process and whatnot in general, but once she saw the holes and stuff, she started realizing the snake needed some help. By the time I got home, she's killed all the spiders and beetles she can find in there. She's just inside the enclosure pretty much crying. So we finished getting it cleaned up. I put the aspen in there, which I ended up changing a couple of days later when I realized I was having so much trouble with the humidity, which I did continue to have because of the screen top, the glass lids, and the fact that the like cabinet custom built door thing doesn't shut all the way. So he ended up getting moved into, and timing is key, thank goodness, into a Christmas tree box, which once again, this all happened right at Christmas time. I actually picked him up the day before Christmas Eve. So he's in a Christmas tree box now with hides, something to climb on, a water dish, and it keeps his temperature and his humidity perfect. He's 8 now. He's done a complete full solid one-piece shed now, which honestly that shed looks like it might have been 2 or 3, like he had not shed for a while. He's doing good. Honestly, I was anticipating him being a little more aggressive than he is, but he's not even aggressive. Aggressive is not the word I'm looking for. Defensive, like anxiety ridden, to the point that he strikes out because he feels nervous. Because I don't think any snake is really aggressive in itself. But anyway, so he's not struck at anyone. He gets a little nervous with people that aren't really me. He seems to be pretty comfortable with me, if you can't tell. But I handle him 2-3 times a day. I'm always in the enclosure. I'm always in there now. I'm like a helicopter parent, so I'm always checking temps and in the room and whatnot. So, I'm just always around. He's getting better with my wife. He's still a little anxious of her. He tends to like go and hide from her more so than whereas he will like actively seek to come to me. So I got this Repti wound care stuff that we've been putting on his nose and mouth for a while. From the research I learned online, the gaping was from just like a respiratory infection, like a slight cold from heat and humidity. Now that I've gotten his heat and humidity under control, his mouth and gape, everything is back to normal. His mouth shuts completely. His tongue flicks are consistent for what they're supposed to be, from what I can tell, or from what I've read online, rather. He's eating fine. He moves fine. I don't hear any big, heavy heaving in his breathing. So hopefully we got that under control and hopefully that set in that one really cold night before I convinced my wife to let us go get him. And buddy, I like to tell. But anyway, so now the enclosure, he did not ever want to be in that enclosure, and I don't know if it's because he was eaten by bugs in there before we fixed it and got it sanitized. By the way, it did have 2 big dye rotted holes in the bottom of the melamine too, but I did fix it. We got all the bugs out and cleaned and taken care of, and I actually moved a bearded dragon in there just so it had more like running room. But this guy would not go back in the cage. When he was in the cage, if you were out in the room, he was just cutting laps. If you weren't, he would hide, and he would only hide in one side of the cage. I tried moving the lamp. I tried moving the actual hides, flipping them. I moved his bamboo and whatnot. Nothing worked. He would only stay in that one half of the cage, curled up, and then as soon as I came into the room to do anything, he was just running circles to get out. And when you would put him back in, now the first few times, I'm not even gonna lie, it did make me a little nervous. He would like corkscrew backwards to run up my body to not go back in the cage. So, but now that he's in the, and that also, I think is why our first feeding attempt failed, because he wasn't comfortable in that cage. So, but he's now, like I said, in the big Christmas tree box. He ate a meal, he's pooped, he's completely shed, he posts up and sleeps, moves around his cage. I see that he's climbed a good bit. He gets out 2 to 3 times a day. We get handled. He's good with the baby. She pets his tail while I hold the rest of him, you know. So he's just a really good boy. And when I first got him out, humidity is a thing, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. And this tub did seem to help because I'm not having anywhere near as many problems, because in the beginning, in that big wooden and screen enclosure, I ended up going to Lowe's and getting one of those little garden sprayer hoses, and I was spraying the enclosure literally once every like hour 30, hour 45 minutes, just to keep the humidity where it needed to be. Well, I was having it up to 80, 85 just to help him shed, because like I said, he had apparently been stuck in shed for almost a month with the one blue eye between the time he had him and he was stuck like that, and then the week and a half, 2 weeks I had him that he was stuck like that. So we were doing baths daily, but I was trying to keep the humidity up in the enclosure. So I mean, I set an alarm. I was getting up all night, was getting up and just spraying this enclosure down to keep the humidity up. And finally we got him to shed. He wouldn't eat. I switched him into the next enclosure. He ate literally the next day. He's pooped. He's seeming to be a happy and healthy boy. Going from the corn snakes, which my corn snake, his name is Monda. Well, one of my corn snakes' name is Monda. I'm sure you will meet them here shortly. He's 1 foot 3 inches now currently. I measured his shed, and he was bigger than I actually thought. He doesn't seem that big when you're holding him. It's crazy, really. So yesterday I had to transition him from a 10-gallon tank to a 40-gallon breeder. But I got some footage of that, and we'll talk about that in the next video. If you guys have any questions or feel like I left anything out, or just any comments, like and subscribe. I'm always down to talk, comment back. Let's hang out, guys. Theo's Pets, this is Mitsuki. We appreciate you. Hey guys, I know I just signed off, but while I was doing some editing, I actually found some B-roll of that shed. I just couldn't find a spot really made sense to like chop it and plop it in, so well, here you go. So now when I got him, as I said, he was in one-eye blue for a couple of weeks. Well, I finally got him to shed after a couple of baths, bumping his humidity to 85%. As you can see, it came out in one giant piece, which from my understanding means that the temperature and humidities are pretty correct finally, as well as hydrating him with that bath. But the shed measures from chin here to tip of tail right at 6 foot, 2 inches roughly. So yeah, he's a pretty decent boy.